What's going on, guys? Unknown Player here, and today we're me going over my top tips for playing Trials this weekend. It's that special Halloween mode. So if you don't know, for Festival of the Lost, for Trials this time, for the first time ever, it has some gameplay modifiers, and the game flows very, very differently. So the changes are that there's no radar, it's basically the Inferno modifier, and everyone's running around blind. There's also no revise, which is really interesting. On top of that, the map is also Cauldron, which fits the Halloween theme, I guess, being all dark and creepy. And the final change is that there's jump scares as well, which will pop up randomly, or I believe they're random anyway. There'll be a screaming noise and a bunch of faint spiders that pop up on your screen, so watch out for those too. But as I said, Trials is very different this time around. It's got a real different vibe to it, and I assume it will be the same next week as well, seeing as Festival is running for 2 weeks. So I want to bundle all my tips into this video that should hopefully help you out, and basically my advice on how to go about this very strange mode. I just did a flawless run myself, which is very interesting to say the least. I'll upload a highlights video of it tomorrow, so look out for that. But for now, I'm going to go with my quick and basic tips, and then later we'll get into the more important advice and more in-depth kind of aspects of Trials and what to do with the modifiers. At the end, I'll give my thoughts on this mode and if I like it or not. So my first tip, if you haven't already, turn up your volume pretty much all the way up. You definitely want to have a lot more volume so you can hear what's going on with no radar, but also at the same time be aware of the jump scares because they are quite loud, and make sure your volume isn't too high and be ready for jump scares to pop up every few minutes. They probably happen like once or twice a game, not that often, they aren't that scary, they are pretty loud and distracting, so be aware of those. But obviously you want to have your volume as high as possible. If you've got a gaming headset, that's even better, but you want with no radar to be able to hear the sound cues like people double jumping and shoulder charging, and you'll know when they're rushing and where they are generally on the map. This also leads me into my next tip, which is to limit how much you actually boost jump. The Hunter and the Titan tend to have the louder jumps, and also try not to blink at all. Try not to use that perk if you can, because it's really, really loud. Definitely the loudest of all of them. You should also, of course, be aware that shoulder charging and Titan skating especially is going to be very loud. So be aware of what you're doing and what kind of noise you're setting off, because they are listening and they're going to pay attention to what you're doing. Sometimes I'd use this to my advantage and I would take the long way around and run up the stairs instead of just jumping through one of the holes in the wall, and this would definitely be an advantage. I could sneak up on them and they wouldn't expect me to be there. But if I was to jump through, they'd hear the noise and they'd turn around and know that I was trying to sneak up on them. So my next tip is to not use roaming or aggressive supers, meaning the Blade Dancer, the Golden Gun, Stormcaller, Sunbreaker. I mean, not really people use Sunbreaker anyway. But obviously, if you love a particular subclass and stick with it, don't go using anything you aren't used to and like changing your playstyle massively. If you can, if you have a choice, don't use roaming supers, use defensive ones. So the reason I say this is because roaming supers simply aren't as useful with no radar, because they could just hide in a corner. If you're trying to chase someone, they can either run away or just hide in a corner. They could run behind a door and then they could turn left or right and you'd have no idea where they're going, or they could just completely juke you out. So it's really hard to actually know where they are. They could also just be floating above the door frame as well and you go right past them. So it's very easy to avoid supers with no radar. And on top of that, it's just hard to know when to pop them in the first place. Normally, of course, you wait until enemies are close and you can see a few of them on the radar and then you pop it. But in this mode, you have no idea if there's literally one guy behind the wall, or maybe none of them at all, or three of them. You've got no idea how many are on the side of the wall unless you have callouts and you previously saw them. And the other alternative is simply popping it in front of people, but then you've got the risk of being team shot as well. So generally they're quite risky, and I'd lean towards the defensive supers like Nova or a Fist or a Bow, but especially a Fist or a Nova, because those are really good at shutting people down. You might notice in this gameplay I'm actually going against my advice in using a Blade, but that's because I had two strikers with me and I was the only roaming super, so I was actually using Shinobi's Vow, which is amazing. As I said, if you're really comfortable with a subclass, and stick with it, but try to have more defensive supers on your team than offensive, and don't be more aggressive with them. Try to use them offensively, because simply they're just going to run away if you try and pop them, and it's not going to get you many kills with it. Now, another quick tip that you might think is quite trivial, but a lot of people definitely could benefit from, is actually using a black shader. You want to be able to blend into this map as much as possible and try to not be seen and be like one of those glowy guys you can see across the map very easily. But this mode, things do get a bit messy, and sometimes you have no idea who people are. Teammates get mixed with enemies, but you don't want to be that guy with a super glowy shader that you can be seen across the map, because you might be the difference between someone spotting you in the corner of their eye and maybe not, and you could cost them around. So don't make it easy for enemies to spot you. It's a very simple thing, just use a black shader. You're not going to be missing out on anything, but you could possibly save yourself from dying at one time, and if so, it's of course going to benefit you. And also try to not use the ornaments that make you glow as well, because those are going to do the same thing. You want to be subtle and unnoticed on this very dark map. So let's get into the bulk of my main advice for this version of Trials, and this is to do with callouts and deaths, because these are really important, and teams that are good at callouts and paying attention will be the ones winning. It's really, really crucial. So you want to try and memorize simple callouts for each area in the map so you can call out where someone is, like caves or heavy room, their spawn, your spawn, bridge, places like that. Just make sure you've got a rough name for most of the areas so you can quickly tell someone the information they need to know. Now, where callouts become really crucial is when you die, because like I said, there are no revives, so you're out for the round completely, unless you've got a self-res, which is actually kind of useful right now. But if you actually die, it's not a bad thing, because you can feed information to your alive teammates about where that person that killed you is, and you can give them all the information they need. Also, of course, you'll be able to see the red outline of where the person is. You'll see in my run tomorrow that we're really good at calling out and explaining what's going on and where the enemy is, describing exactly what he's doing. So you need to tell your team what room he's heading, if they're camping on the other side of the door, if they're peeking, say left or right, and give them warnings if they're about to go into the line of sight. Now, this also works the other way around. So if you kill someone, you need to be careful yourself, because keep in mind that person is me calling out every move to their teammates about what you're doing. So stick with your teammates and try not to do any flank positions or do anything crazy, because they will see everything you do through that red outline and they'll be calling out what you're doing. Another really important thing to bear in mind is if you've actually killed someone that round, because if not, you're in a really good position, because nobody knows where you are and nobody's going to be calling you out. You're completely hidden to the enemy team. So keep track if you've killed someone, because every time you do, you're adding to the people that can call you out and see you through walls, basically. Now, talking about orbs, if you kill someone, don't rush their orb, because there's basically no point. I know it's a natural force of habit in normal trials, but unless you know they're going to self-res, which is very unlikely, they aren't going anywhere. So just get away from their orb, and actually you should try and get as far away from it as possible, because they're going to be watching you. Like, every orb is basically a surveillance camera, and they can see you. They can see exactly what you're doing, and if you try and camp them, someone's going to probably shotgun you. So try and stay away from them and give the enemy team as less information about you as possible. Now, of course, on the other hand, if one of your teammates die, then you want to move away from that orb as much as possible, because they'll be expecting you to do that again. It's a force of habit in normal trials to try and get your teammates res. Obviously, you can't do that here, so just move away, try and flank around, and don't be where they'll expect you, which is sitting right on your teammate's orb. So those are all my tips for this festival, the Lost version of Trials, and hopefully they help you out. Now, in terms of my thoughts on this actual mode, I actually really like it. I definitely wouldn't want it permanently. I think it's perfect just for 2 weeks and then going back to the regular version. But I normally really hate having no radar. I never play Inferno personally, but I still don't really like that element of it. But I do really love the no revives aspect. I think it makes things really competitive. I honestly wouldn't mind a rotation or a version of Trials or even elimination with no revives. I would love to play it myself. It's really nice to know that people aren't going to revive and just come back to life out of nowhere, and you have to push orbs or worry about res shields if you can get there fast enough. So I personally love the no revives aspect. I think it's a nice change, a nice break from Trials, but definitely looking forward to getting back to normal as well. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Do you like this mode? Have you tried it yet? Have you gone flawless? Let me know your thoughts. And of course, look out tomorrow for a Trials highlight showing my run. Of course, if you enjoyed the video, a like rating will be much appreciated. And I'll see you guys in the next one.